Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by That Chicken Dude. Chapter 28 When Villains Attack, Part 6. The heroes had done all they could in the fight against the Nomu, but it still wasn't enough. That thing was faster, stronger, and more durable than either of them, and worst of all, it could heal. Their quirks almost did nothing to the monster, and any damage done was nothing. Pretty soon, they were overtaken and beaten down badly. Eraserhead had his face smashed in and his spine nearly crushed. Present Mike had his leg broken and his neck chopped so hard it damaged his vocals. Vlad King took a blow to the head hard enough to knock him clean out. So, the heroes lay on the ground in a heap of themselves, with monsters slowly sulking towards them, ready to finish the job. Present Mike, with still working arms, crawled over to the downed Eraserhead and told him, "Shota, I hate to say it, but this looks like the end." Eraserhead, barely lifting his head to look at the oncoming monster, and replied, "I think you might be right." Soon they saw the monster stop, go low, and dash towards them. "It was great to fight alongside you," Mike told his friend while closing his eyes. "You as well," Eraserhead agreed while also looking away. However, their imminent demise did not come, and instead they were met with a strong whipping wind hitting their faces. When they opened their eyes, they saw the Nomu trapped behind what looked to be a wall of wind. Confused as to who their savior was, they were drawn to the sound of someone yelling at the monster. "Leave them alone!" a young voice yelled at the beast as they saw the determined face of Izuku holding out his hand. Ignoring the wall of wind and the monster for the moment, Eraserhead lifted his head and yelled as loud as he could, "What are you doing here, kid? Get out of here!" "And leave you to die? No thanks!" Izuku shot back as he used the wall to push the Nomu back, but the creature tried to dig in his feet to keep it from sliding, which Izuku changed up to forming spikes of wind that pierced his body, causing it to be pushed away from the helpless heroes. Izuku then sprouted a pair of wings made of wind and flew just as fast right in between the monster and the heroes. "It's our job. It's what we're prepared for," Present Mike tried to argue with him, but Izuku wasn't having any of it, as he shot back while arguing, "Just because you could die doesn't mean you should." Izuku saw how the Nomu broke through the wind spikes and after healing its wounds tried to run towards them once more, but Izuku used a space-bending quirk and turned the monster into an abstract artwork. Normally, this quirk would cause anyone to become completely immobile from the shock, but the creature started moving outside of the bubble. Izuku realized the monster was very mindless and wasn't affected by the quirk, knowing it was more of an illusionary mental attack. The two heroes looked at the boy in shock, and Present Mike exclaimed with his damaged voice, "Whoa, I thought you were quirkless. Where'd all that come from?" Izuku then erected a wall made of stone around them as the Nomu was starting to come out of the space bubble. Once the defense was made, he turned back and complained, "Can we discuss this after we take down the giant monster? I hate to tell you this, kid, but none of us are in any shape to stand, let alone fight," Eraserhead told him. "Wasn't talking about you," Izuku corrected him. Before either of them could ask what he meant, they heard a high-pitched screeching noise coming from above. Looking up, they saw something with blood-orange-red wings flying in circles around the auditorium. The creature circled a few more times before finally hovering in the air while screeching, "Is that a—" Eraserhead began to ask. "Dragon!" Tamora shouted in shock. Torchwick breathed a hefty stream of fire down the two villains, and Kurogiri opened a portal to divert its flow. However, he brought it down too fast, and both had to dodge when the pony-sized lizard swooped down on them with claws and teeth ready. Torchwick doubled around after his first attack and shot several fireballs at the two villains, causing them to dodge and move further away from one another. "What the hell kind of science lab is this place?" Tomura exclaimed as he swatted at his shirt that was starting to smoke. "One where we truly underestimated them," Kurogiri inferred while swatting the suit of his outfit. "How? This place was newly built and just starting. How could our sources so far from what it was?" Tomura stressed. "In all fairness, we did do it last minute when UA decided to come here instead of the USJ," Kurogiri told him, making Tomura growl. But he didn't have time to stew in anger as Torchwick came down and blasted the two villains with a smokescreen. Tomura attempted to suss out Kurogiri in the smoke, but even though it was one spray, it was thick. It was so thick, it was like walking through a mist on a new moon. Then he saw a pair of glowing eyes in the dark and walked to them, only for the eyes to flash a set of teeth and jump on him. Despite his unhealthy-looking physique, Tomura was surprisingly fast and strong. However, now wasn't one of the times for him to show it. Despite Torchwick being smaller than the man, he was far stronger than most humans and had the man pinned down with his claws as he dug his fangs into his throat. Torchwick had him in such a position where Tomura could only kick his legs, but he couldn't even make a sound. Torchwick was doing what all predators do and checking out their prey before eating it. Tomura attempted to bring up his hand to use his quirk, but every time he did, the claws would only sink deeper. Tomura was starting to black out and he could see his whole life flashing before his eyes, and it was horrible. Before everything went out and he was devoured by the animal, a gunshot rang out and Torchwick let go of the villain. He stretched out in pain as he stumbled off his body and Tomura gasped for air. He looked over and saw the dragon with a bullet wound on his shoulder and looked to the other side to see Kurogiri with a gun in hand pointing it at the small creature. Torchwick walked to the man and screeched. Kurogiri pointed his gun again, but this time when he fired another bullet, Torchwick evaporated it alongside the portal the Mist Man attempted to put up in defense, setting the man ablaze for a moment. But it was only for a moment as Tomura rolled over and slapped his hand on the animal's flank, causing it to decay to the point where its ribcage and organs were all exposed. Torchwick falls to the ground appearing dead. Tomura, getting up, walked back over to the Mistman as he managed to put the fire out before it can engross him further, only for the two of them to watch as the seemingly dead body of Torchwick rise and the wound begin to rapidly heal. Tomura growled at this and looked back over to the Nomu, expecting several corpses to be strung about. Instead, he sees the Nomu trying to break through the many layers of the stone walls that are easily replaced and added on by Izuku to keep it at bay. "Enough of this crap! I'm gonna get rid of that kid myself," Tomura proclaimed while stomping over the monster and team. Meanwhile, the Nomu had just broken through the last stone wall and came upon the sight of nothing. No matter where it looked, the other side of the ever-growing stone walls was nothing. It was like the heroes just disappeared. However, that was only half true. The heroes and Izuku did disappear, only from sight, not the spot. In truth, the young man and the pros had turned completely invisible, and the mindless creature didn't seem to know or understand This as it just stood there and looked around. But its attention was caught when Tomura announced, "Nomu, get that flying lizard." The Nomu obeyed his command and turned tail to run after the regenerated dragonling. Tomura, who saw the trick being played out, ran and tackled Izuku, causing the invisibility to drop. Before he could use his quirk on the teen, Izuku turned into smoke, slipping right out from him while rising into the air. After reforming and sprouting wings of the wind, Izuku used the wind to create blades of it, while throwing them down on all the villains and monster. Kurogiri opened portals to avoid them, while Tomura dodged with every ounce of speed he had, yet he was still getting nicked, while the Nomu took everything head-on and grew back whatever was sliced or removed. Izuku saw this happen and wanted to try something else, but didn't get the chance as Tomura appeared from the portal above and drop-kicked him back to the ground. The villain went to grab him with his hand, but only managed to grab and decay his coat before Izuku turned around, grabbed his hand, and using his super strength, threw the man away. Izuku then grabbed and ripped up a huge section of seats in the auditorium and threw it at the villain. Kurogiri opened another portal and allowed seats to fly straight through. Izuku then creates a tornado around the villains to trap them while he tries to subdue the monsters, running after the creature and with all his strength sending a punch right into its back. Much to his surprise, his fist was absorbed into the body before sending him flying back like a trampoline. Izuku realized that the physical attacks wouldn't work any better than the mental, so he'd have to try something else, and fast. He saw the monster's exposed brain and started to craft wind into blades once more, aiming for the weak spot. However, he didn't get a chance as Tomura was upon him again, and the two of them got locked into a game of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, Torchic was completely healed, and even pushed out the bullet out of the wound from its side. After cracking its neck, it saw the huge creature barreling at him. He tried to deter it with a shriek, but it didn't even flinch at his display of aggression, so he took to the air, though he didn't get far as his tail was grabbed by the monster. That was the wrong thing to do, as Torchic set it ablaze with fire. The Nomu grabbed at its face to ward off the fire, freeing Torchic and allowing it to take to the ceiling above, where he flew in circles and began to pepper him with fireballs. The Nomu's vision returned, and it turned its back against the onslaught of fire. The creature looked back, seeing the small dragon, and jumped towards it. The monster grabbed the dragon and threw it to the ground, where it landed on top of him, causing it to cry out in pain from its broken ribs. The Nomu grabbed the dragon's head and tried to crush it while Torchic fought back and breathed fire, but it did very little. He was still so young, and his fire wasn't anything to scream about. The little creature had to do something, otherwise this thing could kill him. Suddenly, something stored in the little animal's soul, and something like a small flame that was engulfed into something akin to the feeling of a wildfire that blazed within him, and with a newfound sense of fire and vigor, Torchic expelled the blast of fire so hot and powerful that it melted the monster's hand clear off its face, and much of the arm attached. Torchic used its superheated fangs to rip off the Nomu's foot from its body, and used its surprisingly long tail to whip at its head, stunning it and causing it to fall over. Once Torchic was back up on his feet, he rammed the downed animal in its head with its horns, before grabbing it by the back, lifting it into the air as far as he could before dropping it down. The Nomu bounced like it was a ball before Torchic came down on it, returning the previous favor and setting its back on fire with a wave of flames. The small creature then took the monster's good leg in its teeth and threw it towards the stage, where the Nomu got caught in the curtains, thus allowing the dragon to breathe a stream of fire and set the drapes on with the monster caught in it. Torchic thought he had defeated its foe until another gunshot was heard and the dragon felt something hit the back of its head. He scratched the area and pulled out a bullet. Turning around to see Kurogiri, he wasted no time in shooting a fireball at the Mr. Man. As usual, Kurogiri tried to put up a portal for the flaming ball to pass through, but instead, it burned through the portal and hit him dead on. Kurogiri screamed as he was set on fire and desperately tried to roll himself out. Torchic saw this, licked his lips, and got low like a stalking predator. He could take out the Mist Man before calcifying the other man that was quickly overtaking Izuku, though he didn't get the chance. The Nomu, now mostly healed, jumped out of its flaming prison, tackled the dragon, and tried to crush it with his hands. Torchic countered by biting down on its exposed brain and getting ready to fire. But Nomu learned from its old mistake and grabbed the dragon's neck and chest. Torchwood countered again by clawing its face and arms while stabbing him in the neck with its tail. Meanwhile, Izuku was not doing so well against a far more experienced villain. Even with several quirks at his disposal, Izuku still had no experience in fighting and was trying to hit him with whatever he had. It had gotten to the point that Izuku was flying around the villain, doing everything in his power to touch him, leading to a mid-air tussle where Izuku was using his super strength to either hold back or snap the villain's bone. He was even trying to hypnotize him, but that didn't seem to work. Eventually, he slammed into a wall and the villain pushed off against it and sent Izuku falling to the ground where they both took a nosedive. After crashing, Tomura was back upon Izuku and was trying to rot him away, but Izuku used his super strength to hold him back and break his bones. Was starting to lose his focus in all the chaos. Yet, having his bones broken didn't seem to deter Tomura as he saw the look of desperation and fear on the teen's face as he continued to press down despite his wrists about to snap like glow sticks. He growled down at the teen with malicious intent while asking, "Any last words?" Izuku's expression changed for a moment to calm, and with a smile on his face he replied, "Flame on." Izuku felt something sticky and cold hit his wrists as they were being held back, but didn't have time to question it, as suddenly the teen himself was engulfed in flames. Tomura screamed as he was set ablaze, and Izuku used the opportunity to punch him in the face and sending his burning body flying. "Young master!" Kurogiri cried out as he rushed to his ward. "Put me out! Put me out! Put me out!" Tomura cried out in desperation as he tried to wipe the fire from his body. The Mistman quickly produced a fire extinguisher from a portal and put the young man out before laying him down on the ground in exhaustion and pain. Kurogiri leaned down and felt the Tomura's body. Feeling something sticky on him, he realized what it was and observed aloud, "Kerosene gel." He then stood up, looked towards Izuku with his pistol, and told him, "I hope you realize I have to kill you now." "Not if we have anything to say about it," a voice yelled at him as the sound of heavy fast footsteps ran towards them. When the two villains looked in the direction of the new voice, there, barreling through the destroyed auditorium, was Egon on the back of a charging and angry-looking Gammoth. The villains didn't have time to comment, as Gammoth was upon them, and using a tusk to send them flying off in opposite directions. When they crashed into the other side, the mammoth continued her charging, and once she was upon them again, she raised her back legs and brought her front one down. Kurogiri warped away while Tomura rolled, though this didn't deter her as she relentlessly went after the one she could see. Then, using her forelimb, she held down Tomura, wrapped her trunk around his neck, and began to pull. Tomura could only flail like a fish as the ancient elephant attempted to pull him apart. But he survived this as Kurogiri remanifested and shot her in the side. Thanks to her woolly coat and thick skin and a layer of fat, the bullet did very little damage, and only pissed her off even more. Grumbling at the Mistman, she let her foot off the young man and used him like a flail to smack him right into the Mistman, sending him and Tomura flying away as she trumpeted angrily. After collecting himself, catching his breath, and shaking off the previous feeling of nearly being pulled apart, Tomura commented in anguish, "Now a woolly mammoth? What the fuck is this place?" Egon, who jumped off Gammoth a while ago, saw Torchwick struggling against the Nomu, and said to the elephant, "Gammoth, go help Torchwick." Gammoth, looking at the monster, grumbled and charged at it, while Egon pointed an angry finger to Izuku while telling him, "You and I will talk later." Izuku sighs in distress and replies, "I know." Gammoth charged at full speed towards the monster, and it had no time to react as a huge animal rammed into it, causing it to fly off and release Torchwick. Gammoth then held the monster down, grabbed one of its limbs with her trunk, and pulled until the limb came off. When the monster showed no signs of being affected by the limb ripping or being dead, she kept pulling off limbs until she finally got to the head. By then, the Nomu regrew its first arm and grabbed its trunk. After ripping it off its neck, its other limbs grew back, and it stood up before taking Gammoth by the trunk, swinging her around and throwing her to the side. After doing this, Torchwick surprised the monster and tried to chew off his brain, but the Nomu caught him before any damage could be made. Gammoth got back to her feet after being thrown and saw Torchwick fighting the Nomu again. She charged once more, but this time the monster saw her and threw at the dragon, with its fist colliding with the tusk, and they both cancelled each other out. Despite her strength and size, she was far slower than the Nomu, and its punches broke through her defense with ease, leaving her to flail about as she tried to swat at it. Torchwick aided and distracted the creature by attacking the part of its back it would reach, which gave Gammoth more than enough time to swing herself towards the monster and slam it with her tusks. But the blow was shot right back at her with its bouncy skin. Changing tactics, she raised her hind legs and brought her forelimbs down. However, Nomu caught them. Gammoth weighed tons and was putting all her weight into rushing attacks, but the Nomu was far stronger than her weight and was starting to push her back until Torchwick came to its chest and breathed a hole right through its torso, weakening the monster and allowing her to crush the monster under her foot. Unlike last time, the Nomu's body didn't bounce it back, but only absorbed it for a moment before starting to cave in from the constant pressure. Gammoth put all her weight into flattening the monster, while Torchwick blew fire in its face, making the monster cover up with its still free hands. Meanwhile, the villains were in a losing battle with the two scientists. Their only defense was Kurogiri's portals, as the two men hit them with a plethora of quirks. Using the space bubble quirk, Izuku would destroy the defense, while Egon would shoot either lasers or breathe fire. Kurogiri would put up new portals just as fast when blades of wind came to their way and bolts of lightning from Egon. Kurogiri would try to use the gun every chance he got, but Izuku would put up a stone wall, and when it felt like they could change position again, thanks to their invisibility, the cycle started again. If the things for the villains didn't look bleak before, then their chances slipped further when Egon called for the Mimicuties to attack. Before they knew it, the villains were beset by a whole horde of lockboxes with major awards and teeth. Luckily, this is the one thing that Tomura could do in the long-range shootout, and managed to take out every Mimicutie that got close enough, but still got nicked or bit here and there. In a calm panic, Kurogiri informed him, "Young master, we must retreat. You're in no shape to continue fighting, and All Might isn't here yet. We can use Nomu another day." "No, not until one of them is dead." Tomura agreed while gritting his teeth. Tomura looked over at his monster only to see it getting manhandled by the two animals. Even though the monster had gotten back to its feet, it was knocked in its brain by a seed wrapped in the trunk of the Gammoth, before getting grabbed by Torchwick and getting flown headfirst into a wall as more fire was breathed out on it. "You were saying, young master?" Kurogiri inquired. Tomura gripped and rocked to the ground in frustration before exclaiming, "I wanted no more to kill the heroes at least." Kurogiri obliged this request and commanded the monster, "Nomu, dispose of the heroes." Just as the Nomu was crawling out of the rubble, a voice called over the PA system, "Oh, you'll be doing no such thing." "The rat," Tomura growled. He announced excitedly, "Because the security system is back online." Boy, did that feel longer than 5 minutes. A small chuckle was heard as he stated with a dark tone, "Which means..." "Warning, all kill protocols have been engaged, and all non-registered vital records will be eliminated," the security system announced. "I would say it was nice to know you, but... well, you know," Nezu told them as several miniguns descended from the ceiling and pointed at the villains and their monsters. "Dance, you vile monkeys, dance! Ha ha ha!" Nezu cackled wildly. "Sometimes I forget he's a high-functioning sociopath," Egon stressed with a sweat drop as Izuku stood there in uncomfortable silence. Without a moment to spare, the guns began to fire on all chambers at them with fatal intent. Kurogiri acted fast and wrapped his form around Tomura in a protective shield, causing the bullets to pass straight through harmlessly. The Nomu, on the other hand, was peppered with so much firepower that its bouncy skin broke within seconds and holes opened up all over its body, turning it from monster to Swiss cheese in seconds. Gammoth then grabbed the stunned monster by the foot and threw it into a Tesla gate, where it was shocked with several thousand joules of energy before getting flung out by the power and straight into Torchwick's mouth, where he grabbed its brain and bit a huge chunk off, only for the guns to pepper it even more to the point the systems detected no more life, which caused it to turn back to the villains to subject them to bullet hell. "Welp, there goes your monster," Nezu chuckled in a vexing tone. Without another word of argument, Kurogiri engulfed himself around Tomura and began to teleport him, where the young man angrily declared, "This isn't the last time you'll see of me. Mark my word, I'll be back again, and I'll tear you and this place to nothing. With that, the two villains vanished. The security system stopped, no longer sensing the intruders. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Finally, the villain attack arc has finished. I mean, this is a long arc. It feels like I've been doing this forever. I mean, it maybe feels that way since my channel started really growing once I got to this part, even though it was completely unrelated. Somehow my first one shot makes up for like 90% of all views on my channel, which is ridiculously funny. I mean, currently, as the time of recording this, it sits around 3,000 views, which, I mean, wow. That's more than like 20 times the next highest, which is crazy. It also makes up for like what, 95% of all my likes I've ever had, which is weird. I mean, yeah, that I feel like that video is an anomaly, which is fair enough. I hope you just enjoyed all these chapters and stuff. Anyway, we'll be moving on from this villain arc, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!